Fantasy Six-Pack Hour with your hosts, Joe Bob and AJ Applegarth.
Welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, as usual, Mr. AJ Applegarth, having technical difficulties again. Sorry, man. I don't know. I don't know what to do, man.
I blame the cookies.
I just blame you. Is that okay? That's probably more accurate. Yeah. Yes. Right. All right, guys. So we will be talking about some of the fantasy baseball impact on the new rules for this upcoming baseball season, the bigger bases, the pitch clock, the defensive shifts or the lack thereof. And then we're going to jump into some of the free agent and big trades that went down this off season. And we'll get into that in a second, but business has to be attended to first. So, make sure we hit those subscribe buttons, those like buttons, leave those comments, guys, wherever you're watching or listening. We appreciate it. It goes a long way in helping us out. And then also, we have launched, as of last week, our new memberships over at Fantasy Six-Pack. So we did football stuff last year only. This year, we're doing the entire site. So baseball, football, we got all the sports, all the DFS and everything else. Best of all, in addition, this year, we've got a new draft cheat sheet that I built personally using the formulas I use to build my rankings, which have finished in the top 10 on Fantasy Pros multiple times. And I have finished in the money on RT Sports and other best ball leagues as far, for that, if you're looking for the points league stuff. So those should do you very well. Go ahead and download those. And then we've got our Discord, which is free, but then we've got some members-only channels. We've got DFS projected. We got lots of stuff, guys. Go over there, fantasysixpack.net/plans. Use promo code F6PMLB for 15% off. One last thing, is if you're looking for a place to move your fantasy league, or if you need some more customization, or you just want to start a new league, go to Fantrax, guys. This is the place to play. I love their customization. It's 99% of it is free. If you need some of the advanced, like the customized rules, it does cost some money, but it's really not that much. But their player pool is deep. So if you're in dynasty leagues, especially, that's the place to go. I know AJ and I both play in leagues over there, and we both like it. Go ahead and start your league up this year, fantrax.com/fantasy six-pack, and you won't regret it, I promise. So, but let's bring in our guest this week, and happy to have him back on. And Mr. Rudy Gamble from Razzball runs all the projection tools over there for multiple sports. Smart guy, so I'm glad to have him back this week to talk about everything I mentioned we're talking about. What's going on, Rudy?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. So we're ready to jump in some of these rule changes and the transactions, but couldn't get into that until we do beer of the week first. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean it is the fantasy six-pack hour, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean I'm only drinking one at a time. I don't have you're not like
AJ. You have a beer fridge next to you, and he just whips them out as he goes.
Yeah. I see the liquor back there. I mean, it's impressive. I mean,
he has never actually turned around and taken a swig of one of those. One of these shows, he's gonna do it.
No, that'd be baller. Do you have any? Good
he's
bourbon?
Gonna do it. He's so mad at his.
I'm so angry right now.
He's so angry at his computer. He's doing it.
This is. You tell me, Rudy, which one do you want? This is the.
This
is Scotch.
Oh, Scotch! I can't drink Scotch. It tastes like an ashtray to me. I know. It's an uncultured mouth I've got.
So I will.
He's got some bourbon whiskey stuff over there.
I only drink white trash bourbon.
I've got plenty of that.
That I would take some from. Yeah, I've heard something about Colonel Taylor.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
So
good. This is gonna be a show.
I don't have my glass, so oh well.
Just
I say,
just tip it back. Yeah. All right. Well, let's do our beer of the week.
I'll take as many outfielders as I want.
Cheers.
All right. Let's do beer of the week. Hang on, guys.
Okay. So I'm drinking a local. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I had a sound effect. Sorry, man.
Yeah, no, a Homer,
you're good.
Good one.
Just cut off.
Yeah, so this is a local called Austin Beer Works. It's a Flavor Country. It's a hoppy pale ale. So if you like pale ales and you like IPAs, but sometimes the IPA is too much, you go with the hoppy pale ale. It's the beer to drink. It's the ale to drink when you're drinking more than one.
All right.
Which is like repurposing an old ad slogan. But yeah, even me, I do like my IPAs. At some point, it gets a little much. And so this is like that perfect beer where it's got a little bite,
all right,
but not as much. And I like their design, which, at least for their very Weezer-esque.
Yeah, definitely.
Their first ones were like blue and green and stuff like that. So
that's a great homage to where we came from to now drinking beer, and it's like, oh, all right, we feel you there. But I'm also drinking a pale ale myself. I'm pretty sure I've had this one on the show. I gotta get used to this phone camera. This is big truck flatbread pale ale. So this
where is that out of?
This is Big Truck
Detroit.
Farm. Yeah, totally.
Should be.
Totally.
That's a good one.
Right downtown, right by the sports complex.
Is that downtown Philadelphia? Downtown.
Yes.
It's
in the seafood district of Philly. No, it's in Queenstown, Maryland. Guessing that's maybe near Farmtown. But yeah, it's this is a fairly newish brewery to me, and they put out a lot of different stuff. I've got a couple other ones in here that I will probably be drinking tonight because I'm angry, and it's all good. It's not too heavy. I mean, this one's only a 5.5, but it
sounds really light.
Yeah, it's a nice
big truck.
18-wheeler.
We're light on beer.
18-wheeler light pale ale.
Oh man. All right, so I'm drinking an Elder Pine Southern Hemisphere hazy IPA. If you hadn't guessed, it was a haze. All their cans are the same. I know, AJ, you're right. You're familiar with these. They're all black cans,
boring,
gold logo, and then
that's for sure.
They at least put like a picture on the front of this one. Some of them are just plain.
I don't see an homage to Weezer. That's
not as cool, but the beer's good and I like it. So
it's good beer, but you gotta have presentation. Okay?
Sorry, man. That's what I had in the fridge. I'll stock up after Super Bowl Sunday. So, all right, guys. So let's jump into our show. We're gonna start here with the rule changes for the 2023 season, and we're gonna start with the base running, the steals, right? Like, this is where the impact is going to be. So there's multiple things affecting this, right? It's not just the larger bases, which are 3 inches larger. They're like 18 compared to 15. But there's a couple of other things that are affecting this, right? So they changed some of the pitching engagement rules, right? And they added a pitch timer on top of that, right? So you now have to pitch 15 seconds if there's nobody on base, which that doesn't affect steals, but 20 seconds if there is somebody on base. But the disengagements is really interesting to me, and something I didn't hear about until a little bit later into it. Everybody was so focused on the size of the bases, but you can only disengage 3 total times, and on that third time, if your pickoff attempt isn't successful, the runner gets the base. So, and a disengagement counts as just stepping off. So you can't even just, it's crazy. And after the second time somebody does that, I feel like everybody's just going to like, pew, just take off, man. They're just gone. I don't know how this is going to work. Like, it just seems crazy to me. But Rudy, what do you think the impact of this is going to be on like the stolen base totals we could potentially see this year?
Yeah, I mean, they did it in AAA last year, and it did lead to an increase. I want to say it was like 5%. It was in Jeff and Tanner's process book, and but it was so it had a lift. But I think the tough thing with something like this is that there's going to be a handful of teams or a handful of stolen base guys that go off this year. That maybe this is the impetus to steal just double how much they had from the previous year. But it's so impossible to predict.
Yeah.
What it nets out to me is like from a projection side, we'll project more stolen bases. But it doesn't really change any valuations because maybe the 30 stolen base guy goes up 5 and the 1 stolen base guy goes to like 1.5. So there's like maybe a little bit more value in the heist, but it's not enough that it really changes anything. It's in it from a player valuation standpoint in my eyes, but for sure we'll see more stolen bases. This could, and you might see things where pitchers go on tilt a little bit more, because that feeling of the 20 seconds and pitching before you're ready. I feel like all that, I like it as a fan. A little trip, like every once in a while you're like, you can take 30 seconds if you have to or something. But for the most part,
what's going to happen when they don't like,
but if you've ever watched a game, if you ever watched the condensed game in an hour, you're like, this is so much better.
Yeah.
Like you're like, okay, maybe because you could always hit pause if you have to go to the bathroom or something. But you're like, you realize there's a lot of fat in the game that's not really adding anything. So I like it as a fan. From a fantasy perspective, I mean, I don't know there's not much we can do with it. Maybe, and what'll happen after next year is that then you'll have a better player level baseline.
Right. So this year's hard.
Right. I mean, but it's hard to say. I can't imagine those things really will change anything on a player. As if a player is like, if I only could have got 6 inches better on my lead, I'd steal all the time, but I can't get that. So
yeah. Here's one thought that I've had, and it's like the John Birdies of the world, right? The guys who are so steal reliant, like that's where their value comes from. Does their overall value now drop because players are going to like kind of catch up to them?
Right.
Like because that's the only thing they do.
Saying.
Is there something to that?
I don't.
Or do they just make the extra jump with it?
Well, you would think they do that. That no one's at like a near. Like I mean, obviously last year there was a stretch where John Birdie felt like every time he could steal, he stole.
And I had him, and I loved it.
Yeah, no, oh yeah, it was it was a tear. But there's so few guys that even fit that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's maybe it's one where if a guy even is near there, if you've got it might be that much more worthwhile to roster marginal players with premium speed. This is particularly in deep leagues, but also in a daily league. And just to try to time those, that there might be a few more heaters like that. Just because, once you make a few more, there is some momentum to it. Stealing it has to have a high amount of confidence. You get caught once or twice, you could see how you'd pull back. But remembering one of the biggest drivers on stolen bases, why it goes up and down so much, is player health.
True.
So you'll just see these crazy splits of a guy with speed steal 2 bases and a half. I want to say and this is, I just don't look at data in this way, but I feel like Luis Robert like just stopped stealing last year. I want to say Julio Rodriguez basically like was like stealing tons of bases early and stopped in the second half. Like whatever it is, like the second you have a little something wrong and you're a good player, it's like, yep, no more stolen bases. So that doesn't change with this. It's still an injury. It's still a fairly high, for what it is, a little bit higher risk of a baseball move. Like you're more likely to get hurt stealing a base than swinging at the plate. So those things that doesn't change. He could just get hurt. Yeah,
he could sneeze.
Yeah, but yeah. So I don't think it'll really factor in fantasy. I'd say if I had to think of one thing, it would be if you're in like right now. This is a great time to do those 50-round leagues on NFBC, or if you're doing except for best ball, stolen bases aren't worth it to really dwell on. But if you're playing in this big, like I do this 50-round format, and it's like, yeah, maybe one or two more guys that are like good speed guys, get them on the team. You could bench them, but if they get that Purdy stretch, you just take that and then and just which is to me the greatest thing about roto versus head to head is that it's like you can bank something like that where head to head it's always like, oh my God, remember that week you stole 8 bases? Like, yeah, I won stolen bases that week, or that helped me win my week, but otherwise it's not that memorable. But when it's for like the season long, it's like, oh, people remember everything. People remember these random, like, remember that time in 2021, John Birdie stole 4 bases in a game in September? And that like moved me up in the rankings. And
hell yeah, it did.
That's a great point, because even though we're going to have larger bases here and we're shrinking this distance that they're going, I mean, throwing this disengagements in there is just it's a different aspect that we're not used to. Okay, if you want to blow the bases up, fine. Somebody who takes a 3-step lead is still taking a 3-step lead, knowing they're that much closer. Now, are they going to take a 4-step lead and try to throw the pitcher off or whatever? Maybe, but from
especially if they've already done the 2 disengagements, I would. That's where it's going to get interesting, I feel like.
Exactly. And I think that like those disengagements coming into it, I think really just it's going to help fantasy, but it's going to be marginal. I mean, how many people are really going out and being like, you know what? I'm winning steals this year. I don't give a shit about all these other categories. I'm taking steals.
Sadly, I know a lot of people do that.
Unless you want to be in last place, fine, have at it.
Yeah, so the one other rule that obviously is important for fantasy is the defensive shifts, and they're getting rid of them this year. And basically, it's infielders have to stay in the infield, right? They can't go into the outfield anymore. They got to stay on their side. So shortstops got to stay over there. You might be able to shift within your zone, but no longer 4 guys on one side. That's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, the second base ump's got like a taser and like a cattle prodder. So you go past that line.
It's got a whip. Love
it.
So there's 2 sides to this, right? And it's I'll let you pick where you want to start. So the impact this will have on hitting, right? So and maybe give some examples of who's going to see large gains. Obviously, I would think batting average is where we're all going to kind of go with on this. And then pitching, so a lot of people have talked about how this is going to help the hitters. But this is going to negatively impact some pitchers, especially contact pitchers, right? This is no longer the defense going to bail them out. So I'll let you pick where you want to go first with this.
No, this one is a lot more meaningful. and it will have disproportionate impact that we can predict, right? Like if basically something's going to have impact and you have no idea where, then what's the point of worrying about it? So the hitting is the easier of the two. So the shift disproportionately hurts lefties who pull the ball a lot. And, it doesn't do anything for fly balls. It has a marginal impact on the line drives because that line drive that was being caught in short right field. But it's really about ground balls. So you can go into something like Fangraphs, look at leaderboards. You could see who got shifted the most. You could see, how many. You could even get to things like what's their batting average on ground balls, stuff like that. But so guys who are going to get impacted include guys like Joey Gallo for sure. Corey Seager was one that gets shifted a lot. Rowdy Tellez. So, the extreme cases could see like upward movement of like versus last year, like 20, 25 batting points, like say like 200 to 225 or 225 to 250. The one thing to note there is, for them to see a big impact versus last year would have meant they had they likely would have had a low batting BABIP, and the projection systems are already going to regress that up, kind of like, this hitter can't be a 250 batting average guy. Could they hit that many ground balls? They should have been luckier. So they'll move them up closer to like 275 or 280, which means that, I'd say like something like a Corey Seager might go up 20 something points from last year, but don't just add that to his projections this year because they're already kind of giving him credit to bounce back a little bit.
They are, yeah. Seager's a perfect example. His BABIP last year was 242. They're already projecting like 295 as a high, 290.
Right.
So yeah, it's already been built in.
Right. So I don't think it's going to change from there. There's on the hitter thing. Yeah, it'll have some impact. I think, the projection systems will have it better integrated in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I think, that you're first getting out the projections, and then things like something like that setting league averages kind of comes in a little later in the preseason. The pitcher part, so that part I already did some deep diving into. It impacts ground ball pitchers more. So basically, fly ball pitchers already have low BABIP, but they have to risk the homers.
Right.
So that's so like a guy like Christian Javier is a very heavy fly ball pitcher. His BABIP is super low, could be like the lowest in the league, but things average out in terms of your ERA. But you had two things. So one is the high contact ground ball pitchers. There's definitely impacts, but then you've got who get impact even more are the guys that were benefiting because their teams were really advanced, either very good on defense or were very savvy with shifts. So like the Dodgers have been on like a 2 or 3 year run where their team BABIP is like some of the lowest ones in recorded baseball in since 80 years. So guys like Urias, both the last 2 years, Gonsolin last year, they have others. Their BABIPs are like unsustainable. So those guys will probably have larger corrections, which is probably I made some adjustments on our projections on it. I think there's going to be definitely. It's tougher to be a ground ball pitcher. Now you're going to get more hits are going to go through, and it kind of compounds. It'll be a case where I think you're going to want to gravitate a little bit more to the guys that miss bats this year.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, and in fact, talked about this today on one of the shows that's going to come out soon on this channel with Alston. We did our starting pitchers like that we want to draft after like ADP of 150, and he mentioned the same thing. Like, it's going to make those guys that can get swing and misses that much more valuable, because guess what? The ball's not in play if you strike them out, and you don't have that risk. So yeah, I'm glad you made that point. That's spot on. I totally agree.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one where, like, based on my analysis on like where my projections was, and the ones I partner with Steamer on them, but I felt like the last year or two we were really not crediting those contact guys, and now I feel like I'm making a correction to credit them a bit more, but it's reduced. Like I'm not like based on what I'm seeing, I'm like not going to go too far on it. But yeah, so I think I'm feeling good on our numbers for it. But yeah, I would say not just the guys who can guys that could throw a lot of fly balls. Those will be less impacted by this. And
I agree.
And if the balls stay unjuiced, it's just another. So like some guys that fall under that. Christian Javier was one. But like Scherzer and Verlander, very heavy fly ball tilts and missed bats.
Mm-hmm.
And they, so those, I think I want to say Rodon is more of a fly ball pitcher, but not as sure. But yeah, I'm finding those guys looking pretty good on my board, when I'm drafting right now. And that, there's certain guys that I'm just like come off the board. I'm like,
close. Not
even, like certain guys going maybe rounds ahead of where I would put them because of, my increased concern or skepticism towards this. So toward a pitcher being like very good at managing contact.
Yeah.
It's already a tough skill.
Yeah.
It's already a tough skill to sustain, but I think, the shift made it easier.
It's funny. I feel like they did, they implemented the pitch timer, right, to like reduce the game time, but then they got rid of the shift, which could prolong innings because people are getting ball. I don't know. It just seems like
but in an exciting way.
It is.
I'll admit, I'm a fan of this. I love it. It was so tilting to see like a guy. Like it's one thing, like a ground ball that sneaks through the hole.
Let's be honest. I mean,
Chris
Davis. I joked on one of the shows I did with Austin. It kind of ruined Chris Davis' career, although he strikes out 45% of the time. But
he had. There were a lot of guys that it just seemed like once they could shift. Yeah, and it just kind of had this momentum where it snowballed because like then a guy you'd only be pitched inside, you'd never get pitches over the plate. I feel like Teixeira kind of fell off the face of the earth. I mean, he was injuries somewhat. But Brian McCann was one that suddenly became like, suddenly became. He wasn't like a 230 hitter, but by the time like the shifts came, like he was a low average guy. So I just didn't enjoy it. Especially the guy playing in the outfield. So I think that's the one that just felt like I get it. It's like. You could say the teams are being smart on defense. That doesn't mean it's necessarily enjoyable. And it's like, you could come up with a whole bunch of things that would be smart in football, and they don't let me do it, right? It's like, oh, wouldn't it be smart if like you had like 4 receivers all in a vertical line, and then they run different ways at the line of scrimmage, and you'd be like, you can't do that. They have a rule that says you have to have a certain amount of guys on the line, right? So it's like. This is all sports. So this, basketball, like, I'm sure, like, you
got rid of like the hand checking and stuff. You can't touch people anymore.
Well, but basketball has like, you can't like, it would be smart if you just kept a really tall guy right in front of the net all the time. But they have a 3-second violation. So, so I kind of just see it within those. I don't see it as like particularly unfair, but from
I like the
fantasy
rules.
perspective, just know it's going to be you could see look at teams based on their team BABIP, and particularly if you could this gets harder to do if you could isolate like their BABIP on ground balls, and you start seeing some teams you're like, what? Like the differences are so stark, and the Dodgers are just the easy one to pick out. And you're just like, yeah, that's gonna come back to some extent. It doesn't help the Dodgers that I think their team got worse defensively. And one last interesting thing for baseball, what this does is that you were able to hide a good bat fielder at second base because the shift allowed you basically let you hide them because they didn't have to have the same range. So I do think you're going to see more second basemen who are more traditional second baseman, a little bit more speed, a little less power. That type of player is now going to have to make it at third. I don't know if that's fair to say about Max Muncy, but because I haven't watched a lot of Dodger games, but I always felt like he's playing second. Is he really a second baseman? I kind of think he's a first or third baseman.
That's a good point. Yeah, Muncy does not look like your typical second baseman.
Right. So all of a sudden, you could see there's a quote from the Dodgers saying like, the rookie Miguel Vargas is going to play second, but it's all about, he's really athletic and young and one of our faster guys. It's like, that's what that was the historical second base. Like the Jeff Kent was the anomaly.
Yeah.
And now, so I think you're gonna just something to consider if, for certain types of players where they, their playing time might be coming from.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's jump into these transactions, and we're going to start with the Blue Jays, who were very, very busy. So we're just going to rip through like kind of everything they did. We've got some names highlighted. I'll point those out for sure and ask you some questions. Feel free to chime in with whatever else you want. But first off, their trades. The one trade with Arizona was kind of big and pretty shocking, actually. They traded Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel, and they received Dalton Varsho. And then with Seattle, they traded Teoscar Hernandez and got Eric Swanson in return. There's other names involved with here, but fantasy-wise, at least for 2023, this is what we care about. And then they signed Chris Bassett and Kevin Kiermaier. So, I've got that trade with Arizona highlighted as one that I was curious to get your thoughts about, and from either side.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind the trade in general baseball terms. I think Arizona saw it right that Varsho is not going to be a catcher in the long term. They're stocked on outfield. Whether, Moreno is one of the top prospects for catcher. I don't think Moreno's of any real value in fantasy this year. I think Varsho is a fun guy to have as you're in a one catcher league. I think he's probably going too expensive in a two catcher league right now. But the only concern I really have with Varsho is, he's not going to play any catcher on that team. They already have two. I don't think he's going to hit. If he told me he'd hit in the early part of the lineup, if somehow he would find his way in the top hitting second, I mean, his value is through the roof. I think he's going to be towards the back of the lineup. I think he'll give you power. I think he'll give you pretty good stats. The runs RBIs won't be fantastic. The average won't be fantastic. But yeah, he's kind of the most interesting guy from fantasy on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Varsho, right, is that at least for this year, he still does have that catcher eligibility. That's what pumps his ADP up.
It does, and the power, he showed nice power last year. He was supposed to be a good batting average guy, but he might have sold out for the power last year. But he showed power, and there's positive news about Toronto's remodeling of the park. So it's an offense you want to have guys on it. So like I buy the power.
Mhm.
I don't know on the stolen bases. It's not a team that steals a lot. It's not a team that needs to steal a lot.
No, definitely
And
not.
he's not, no brainer fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might end
And
up
he
looking
got
at a guy.
caught 6 times last year and stole 16, so that's not a good percentage.
Yes. So basically like, yeah, he was a big buy for me last year in like the 7th round in 15 team leagues.
Hmm.
This year, I mean, he's going like you have to take him in the 5th round. I'm just hesitant on it, but because I don't buy the stolen bases, and now the average doesn't seem to be that good. But I don't know if he's a guy that he's gonna play every day against lefties. So his counting stats might not be that much better. That's the two benefits of a catcher eligible guy who plays in the outfield is less off days and less chance of getting hurt. But feels like he's a guy that you could always find a righty to play outfield. So like, yeah, I'm we'll see on it right now. I think he's being a little overbought in some of the expert leagues. I'll admit I don't. The Teoscar Hernandez trade only makes sense from a salary management standpoint, and
That one was weird
because
to me.
and he's not a great fielder, and you want Kirk DHing, so they made a conscious decision. Said Varsho seems to be a plus fielding outfielder. Kiermaier is a plus fielding outfielder. So we're going to upgrade the defense, probably get a little younger and cheaper. And Hernandez might have been a guy you DH, but you've got Kirk on that team. So yeah, I think so. That's the only thing that helps it make sense, because Swanson is just fine, but it doesn't make sense for this year. Not going to pretend like it makes sense.
I mean,
to me.
the only thing that it kind of did was, to me, and because they were able to like maneuver some things around, they got more lefties in that lineup, and like we all said this before last year, like it was like 9 righties, and so now they've at least got 3 lefties that they can easily throw in there. I mean, Biggio was the only one that was like sort of penciled in as a guy, but
I mean, he stinks too.
That wasn't great.
Right. And it's never been as good a time in baseball to be a lefty, because we talked about the shift part, but the other thing that's basically now happened is the 3 batter rule is that loogies are going extinct. It's harder and harder to be a lefty in a bullpen now. It used to be the easy, like as long as you could throw like a slider, you're guaranteed to pitch forever.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't carry that. There's bullpens that just can't carry that guy anymore. I mean, you see, there's lefties that are available for free agency that would have already been signed 3 years ago. So it means late games, the lefty hitters are facing less lefty pitchers. But the vice versa is that you have a team with all righties. It's like you're not benefiting from that. So I do think they made their lineup more balanced. They made their outfield defense much better, which helps on their pitchers. So I get it from the resource management thing and some of the balance stuff. But it does, and Teoscar Hernandez's value goes down because Seattle's not a fun place to hit. So he's fine. I mean, but it's you certainly have to, it takes his value down a tick or two. He's also a great, going from a great lineup to a good lineup is a little bit of a demerit.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to the Mets here. Basically, the big signing was Verlander, and they also got Quintana. They got re-signed Nimmo and Diaz, who were good for them. So not surprised to see that. But Verlander's the one that sticks out here to me. He's been a great pitcher through his career. multiple Cy Youngs, won the World Series last year. But I mean, is this something? Is it like, hey, we lost DeGrom, now we're going to go get Verlander? Or, I mean, they lost Bassett too. They lost Walker. What are your thoughts on Verlander coming into New York here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a generally positive from a park standpoint. And while there's a couple of, the Phillies and the Braves are some powerhouse lineups, we got the balanced. That's not as big a thing anymore with the way they've done the schedule.
Yeah.
And plus you'd get the Nats, which are
awesome.
He won the Cy last year. I mean, the thing that's crazy about Verlander, because he's really.
There we go.
Yeah, he's set up really well.
We lost it for a second.
Oh, sorry. I would say like Verlander's set up really well in terms of the stuff that you could really project. His walk rate's so low. His BABIP's traditionally been low because of fly balls and just because the weird angle you get because he's a skyscraper. I think he projects really well. His floor, if he's healthy, is high. The thing that's gone probably is like the 10 plus K9. He's not, he was under 10 last year. I mean, maybe a year more removed, maybe, but he's 39 or something. So I like the Verlander move. I mean, I think, and where he's going in drafts right now is not bad. You just have that little voice inside you. Is like that little kid who guessed it on Sports Center, who's like, Jimmy Key, what is he, like 45? You remember that one, but like that's the thing. Is like, yeah, I know Verlander's old. Like every pitcher's got. I mean, I don't see how Verlander's less risky than DeGrom, or for that matter, Scherzer or Rodon. I mean, these are all guys I generally like. I mean, DeGrom is like another level. I mean, so like every pitcher in that bunch. I mean, I'm looking at my list. It's like Aaron Nola. I get Aaron Nola is as safe as you can get for a pitcher, seemingly. Although he did have to go through the World Series, so a little extra innings. But Shane McClanahan looks great, except couldn't. He lost a ton of velocity He fell apart in the second half of last year. So I think the Verlander move's good overall for the Mets. They lost a lot. I mean, they're pretty well set up. It's going to be pretty insane from a division standpoint. Just in the Mets, Phillies, and Braves. That's just three loaded teams, especially once Harper's back.
It's a tough division to go through. So, but the Mets can spend money, and they continue to do so. So
they wanted to spend more, but it just didn't happen. All right, so let's move over here to the other New York City team, and that's the Yankees. And obviously, they signed Aaron Judge. Not much changes there for them, and then Anthony Rizzo. The newbie that's interesting is Carlos Rodon, and obviously you've already mentioned him, so just maybe give a few more seconds on why you like or dislike this signing for the Yankees. I mean, his fantasy value.
Right. So you're kind of, there is something a little similar to Garrett Cole here, in that I think there's going to be homers. Yankee Stadium is good for homers. It's not necessarily a great park for anything else offensively, like BABIP and stuff like that, but it's good for homers. So you're going to you might be giving up some homers. I mean, oddly enough, he's been great on homers the last 2 years, and one of those years was as a White Sox. So, but that would be one downside. But man, the guy, his strikeouts and his walks have been great. The fastball velocity has stayed consistent the last 2 years. So I don't know. I mean, like I like Rodon a lot this year. I think it's a really good signing. I think the key is he's been able to maintain this 95, 96 mile per hour for the last 2 years, and his fastball is great. It's not like he's this guy who's dependent on like breaking pitches, and this guy is just like his fastball is really hard to hit, and then he can just play off of it. So I like the Rodon signing by the Yanks. I like him for this year, and yeah, it's just you just know like I don't. It's hard to feel like any less comfortable with him than other pitchers, and I think you probably are getting him at good value where you're getting him at drafts, at least right now. We'll see where I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in some of the drafts I do, like in the high stakes NFBC ones. I could see him going in the top 20 to 25 picks by the end of by end of March.
Yeah, I mean, right now his ADP on average is 36 overall.
Yeah. So like I said, I could see.
So end of third round already.
Yeah, I mean, like you're just balancing it with other, yeah. I mean, I have him on the projections as like fourth, and with DeGrom third, who's a guy that it's just so hard to take.
Yeah, my projections have DeGrom really high too. It's like I don't want it to be, but he's that good.
Yeah,
I've got Rodon 10th in my rankings right now, but I mean I could easily move him up. He's that good.
Yeah.
He is, and he's finally been able to showcase his talent the past few years when he's been healthy. Rodon scares me. I'm glad that he's on the other New York team and not with the Mets. But I was hoping that he would get to the Phillies, who took Taijuan Walker away from the Mets. They signed Craig Kimbrel.
Take another shot of whiskey.
I mean, okay, great, okay.
No, Jesus.
But obviously the big name here to talk about with the Phillies is Trey Turner. He's already played with Bryce Harper. They have a great relationship, in and outside of baseball. I think that's a big reason why Trey Turner came here, along with the fact that they managed to somehow find themselves in the World Series last year. But I think Turner's going to be relied on a lot early on this year because of Harper's surgery. What do you think about Turner with the Phillies this year, Rudy?
He came up as a leadoff hitter. I mean, he's a fantastic player. He really has no weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that from a fantasy side too. Now, the Dodgers, he was a 3-hitter. He wasn't a heavy power guy as a 3-hitter because they had Betts, and arguably Betts has probably a little bigger power than him, but I think maybe they liked it better because Betts was on base. So hitting 3, what we saw from Turner on the Dodgers and maybe even at the end of the Nats is like he's super fast and he's a wonderful slider. But he was stealing like 30 bases a year. In concept, he seemed like a guy that could steal 40 to 50.
Yeah.
And that is so I look at like the projections, like ours, I look at, what I'd get from others, and it's clearly saying like, yeah, Trey Turner's like the 10th best player right now. Why? Well, he doesn't hit that much power, and he steals 30 bases, and he's very good on average and some other things. But his ADP is like 3. And so I feel like the market is betting that he wasn't stealing because he was on the Dodgers, and he's going to steal on the Phillies, which wasn't necessarily a team that was running a lot. So that's, to me, the question mark. I almost feel like the market is pricing him as he's going to steal 40 bases. And so I feel like the projections are too low. but I don't think I'm. But I'm also under on the market, so he's kind of a guy that I'm not going to have on any team, and I'm not super happy about it. But you just kind of be like, those are it's great when you pay the market price and you look at it and you go like, I'm taking this guy, but I know I've got this upside. I know I've got that extra, if this guy figures this out, or if this is a year he decides to run. But that's the only thing you have to think about with Turner. And the weird thing is, if you've played fantasy for a while and you don't kind of change your priors, you'd be like, well, I kind of like getting that shortstop in the first round instead of an outfielder. And it's like, if you're playing this year and you go through some drafts, you're like, oh no, I'll take the outfielder. Like, there's plenty of middle infield, but outfield towards your fourth and fifth dries up in deeper leagues. Yeah. And it's like, so I would have been like a year or two, I'd already been converted to like, I'm neutral and I probably wouldn't care shortstop or outfield. And last year was like, man, the longer I could wait on shortstop, the better, because I like so many of these guys. And now it'd be like, yeah, I don't know. I'll take the, I could see a whole bunch. There's a bunch of outfielders I would take over Turner right now. But
you're just getting more out of them from a fantasy standpoint. I mean, I love Turner. I love that he's come to Philly. But I am interested to see how he fits and where he fits in this lineup, because Schwarber wants to be leadoff, and it's like, okay, I mean, you were great. You hit a lot of solo home runs, but we need that like move down in the lineup. And
how about you hit third and actually bat some people in this time?
No, well, I mean, because his best trait, his power and on base for Schwarber.
So that's the thing, like, just awesome. So it's hard to pull him from there, but.
And you're right, with Bryce not there. I mean, you can go Turner 3. You can go. I mean, Turner 2 is rough.
He's done it before. I mean, Turner's in the Dodgers. He was like second and third a lot. It was kind of weird.
But if you told me second,
I don't think he stole a lot. By the way, he was below.
Right. Oh, it's just hard. You cannot. It is hard to steal as a 3-hitter. It's hard to steal more than like 30 bases. Like
you could be the last out, or you're the last hope in the first inning, and it's like.
Or there's guys in front of you, like the lead. That's the benefit of the leadoff is that you're getting more times where you're on first and there's no one else on second. So I think that'll be something that drives it. It doesn't, but I don't know if the market's pricing that out. There's also just a love of there's a comfort level of making a dent in stolen bases in the first round. And I don't know if that case is as strong, just the way the player pool is this year, not the bases or anything like that. But that's the other part. Like, it's where, a guy who's like unquestionably good at some things except stealing might fall. And it's strictly because of that. I don't know.
It's going to be an interesting draft this year, just to see where these guys are going that we are used to taking in specific spots, because of, well, this is a steal guy, so half, we'll for shit's sake, we'll just say half, the majority will be, I think he's going to steal even more now, blah, blah, blah. But other people will be like, well, maybe not. I'm going to try this out. It'll be interesting, but let's move on.
All right, so moving on here, this is probably a little bit quicker. Boston, they re-signed Devers. They gave him that big contract just the other day, actually. They renegotiated for that. Justin Turner came to town, and Kenley Jansen. So this is the one I want to ask you about. So Kenley Jansen, obviously the ex-Dodger, had a great career, but I mean, Kenley Jansen moving away from the Dodgers, first off, who are a very good team and gives a lot of maybe not a lot of save chances, but good enough, right? Now moves to the Red Sox, who I don't think anybody knows what the hell the Red Sox are actually doing right now. Like, it is chaos over there with their roster management. So, and Kenley Jansen has sort of been kind of a wild card recently, so we don't really know what to expect from him. What's your thoughts on the Kenley Jansen signing here, and for him in fantasy?
Yeah, I think he's okay. He's in that tier where he's going to get overdrafted in my like he's not providing premium Ks and ratios at this stage of his career. So that the one of the reasons you could justify paying up for an Edwin Diaz come draft day, or try to think, Hader is generally one. Klaus. One of the reasons you could pay up is that they give you premium ERA, WHIP, and Ks, some level of each. When a guy doesn't give that, all his value is tied up in saves. And yeah, Jansen can get hurt. Jansen might not be as effective. So I don't want a guy that's not going to give me the premium on the ratios and Ks at where Jansen would go in drafts where I'm seeing it today. I'd rather have, a number of guys ahead of him, but it kind of is just more like at his price, I don't like it.
No, I agree.
But in real life, it's fine. But I mean, I don't know what the Red Sox are doing. I mean, that feels like a guy that you flip, because if the Red Sox aren't if he's pitching well, you could flip him at the deadline. I guess. I don't know. Who knows? I really don't. I could see why, though, they didn't want to go through another year of Matt Barnes and not using Garrett Whitlock for some reason. Even though that seemed like that seemed like a good call.
It was obvious. And they're just like, no, you wait your turn. Barnes, get your ass out there and screw this up for us.
They wanted to try everybody in that role. Like, it felt weird. I don't know what the hell they were doing last year.
An ugly bullpen.
No, it was a really weird. I mean, like, I get the thing was that they wanted to try Whitlock as a starter.
Yeah.
And he just kind of, he might do okay in that. I just didn't see a reason why in the short term. If a guy's like dominant there and it's still a question mark on starting, just roll with it. And then a guy like Tanner Houck just try to make it as a starter. So that does seem like a team that's kind of moved from extremely well run to questionable on decisions. And Justin Turner is like, it's kind of a fine accumulator play in fantasy. He's generally had good contact rates. It's a good park for batting average. He's kind of like a real safe later third base in a position where people are bemoaning that there's no depth. He's not going to hurt you in pretty much anything except stolen bases, which you're not getting really from third base anyway. So I've generally liked him the last couple of years. Maybe don't invite him over to your house when he's got a raging case of COVID, but otherwise.
I mean, yeah. Common sense does not really work all the time. So, all right, Joe, take on the Cubbies.
So the Cubs are up next, and kind of strange, man. Like, they weren't good last year. I don't know if they're going to be good this year, but they feel like they're trying by loading up on a bunch of like veteran bats. Hosmer, Swanson, Bellinger, and our comeback boy Mancini here. I mean, they've got some young dudes who are pretty good in that lineup, but like, we don't have to talk about all these guys, but like, I guess just the general question is like, it feels like maybe outside of Swanson who had a really good 2022, even though people didn't want to believe in it before last season. All of these guys, like, they feel like they have to all be bounce back candidates in order for this lineup to be good. Can any of them actually do it in Chicago?
I mean, I like Seiya still. I think,
Okay.
but and Horner's decent,
Well,
but
right.
I mean, but the Cubs just scream kind of just this mediocre team. I don't know what. I mean, they don't really have much on the pitching front that's in the major leagues right now. Yeah, I mean, and
You know,
Swanson's
Justice
just
Steele.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
they're all guys.
exactly.
I mean, it's basically a team that you're going to pay attention to as waiver wire fodder because you're
Yeah.
like Steele definitely was interesting second half of last year. Um, you know, but I mean, guys like Hosmer, Bellinger, Mancini in mixed leagues, those are guys that I mean, I don't see how you draft Hosmer. And
No,
Mancini's
I
a
haven't
real
drafted him in
marginal
forever.
play, but those are guys that like they might be off your team in the next week. Like
Yeah.
that's so they're let's just say they're marginal guys. Swanson's okay. I don't there's something about him that the projections don't seem to like, and makes me think that he's a guy that doesn't age well. That like think of like Javier Baez. Like it was always like it seemed like Javier Baez. It's like from a projection side was always like, oh, this is not sustainable. He's gonna have to change something. He's gonna have to change something, and then yeah, it changed. He's now an afterthought,
Yeah.
accepted by Detroit's accountants,
Yeah.
and
Who
and
are pissed?
yeah,
Man, that was Baez like swing and miss propensity and just
it
like
was so
it,
Swan. Yeah, there's something with Swanson.
I
I
don't
don't.
know. I
I'm,
can't
I'm,
pick it out.
he's just always drafted way ahead of where I've got him with our Raswell. So I'm looking right now at his Fangraphs page. So if I have it on ad free, so that it shouldn't
All right.
crash my browser.
You should be good.
I mean, so one remember so yeah, the stats look good when you first look at them. So one, Swanson's averaged 161 games and 670 plate appearances. So all the counting stats are juiced, right?
Yeah, that's valuable, man.
Oh, it's valuable if you could,
Yeah.
but it's a hard thing. So the other
It's
thing is
already
like the walk rate's not bad, but it's 26% strikeout rate. I mean, last year he had a 348 BABIP.
Yeah.
So basically everything equal, he's a 250 hitter. You put him at more like 150 games, all of a sudden he's a 2010 guy with 80. Like there's value there. So yeah, he's certainly fantasy relevant. It's just
As of last year, people were straight up not drafting him in some leagues. Like it was insane. I don't know where that came from, and I started being like, "Well, wait a minute, why do I like him? Why does everybody else hate him?" So I stopped drafting him too, and then I was like,
right,
dang it,
you're right. And he had a weird. I mean, right. So the biggest thing one of the things for him last year was Albies getting hurt, and because Albies he wasn't that he was anchored at hitting second, but he was certainly a cog there. And when he got hurt, Swanson kind of moved up into that position, and then Acuna was there, but I feel so Swanson that helped on the runs RBIs. There's no one who predicted he ended up with 99 runs, 96 RBIs. Now it was a great offense. He plays 162 games, so that helps. But hitting two helped there, so that sustains going into this year. It's more like he's not a great batting average guy. The 18 stolen bases last year were pretty fluky. He's probably more of a 10 to 12 guy.
Agreed.
And if he's 18, then maybe everyone steals 50% more bases. So I've got him at 103 today because everything changes. And his ADP is 85. It's like around. It's all within general range. I mean, the question for me is that if you could get I have Swanson, Correa, and Bogarts virtually equal, and the markets has Swanson much higher than those two. I'm fine with one of those three. I probably lean toward Bogarts out of the three, just because I feel like there's a little bit more stability with him. Correa, I got in one league, but you always have to worry with him with his uninsurable ankle.
Yeah.
and general, 20 games missed kind of thing. But yeah, so who knows? I mean, every team that employed Theo Epstein, I'm not sure what they're doing anymore. Got the Red Sox, got the Cubs. He worked for MLB. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know. That's right. Like, there's not much to say. You're just like, I mean, like Eric Hosmer. I mean, like, yeah, Trey Mancini. That makes sense. I mean, who doesn't like Trey Mancini?
Exactly. It's
aside from like any South Korean player.
Yeah,
which is just reflexive because of the last name.
If you don't like Trey Mancini, aside from how you put it, I mean, the dude came back and balled out, as much as he could. He's been solid. And then he just kind of lost playing time, really. And I think that cut into his, his ability to actually be sustainable, especially from a fantasy standpoint.
It was tough. I mean, they have Mountcastle is kind of a younger version of him, a younger, slightly, better. And you had Santander there. And I just feel like there just wasn't room for him, where the Cubs, I mean, like first base DH, I'd say if anything, the one thing this did is it put any Matt Mervis conversation on ice. Because now you've got Hosmer and Mancini. They both, I don't think either could play anything besides first base and DH. So you just assume Mervis is in AAA for 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to force those guys in the outfield or at least one of them. But, like, good luck. And then, again, like...
Oh, Mancini in the outfield would not be good.
There's, like, insurance for first base at this point. So Mervis is, like, on ice. Exactly. Perfect analysis.
Yeah.
So all right, so we're going to rip through this a little bit faster. AJ's going to move on to the Astros and the Dodgers kind of at the same time here.
Yeah. So, speaking of Mancini and Astros, the team that he left, they've replaced him with Abreu. And then we've got the Dodgers, who've yet again signed Kershaw for another year. They brought on JD Martinez and Thor, interesting enough, which I was a little disappointed about, I will admit, because I was hoping the Phillies maybe would have re-signed him. But he goes back to LA, so... What are your thoughts on Abreu with the Astros? And he is 36, I believe.
I like that they injected. They went younger at the position because they moved from Yuli. Like Yuli Gurriel was, I think, 30, is a year or two older than Abreu. You wouldn't know it by his hip haircut, but yeah, Abreu's fine. I think we're seeing, he might have that one weird bounce back power year, but generally with his trajectory, if he's going to hit for power, he's going to sell out for it and go down to like 250 to get it, like Frank Thomas in his later years. But I think Abreu could be like a fine accumulator type, with the counting stats will be wonderful in that lineup. Not a guy I'm targeting just because, I don't think he's going to be like fantastic on average or fantastic on power, and I don't have issues with my counting stats. But that one's fine. The Dodgers, Kershaw, for when he pitches, the guy, it is crazy that he's one of those guys that was an amazing thrower and pitcher. Like he's that one where Greinke, I guess you could say, was another one who was like, at their peak, they were impossible to hit because they had amazing stuff and amazing command and amazing feel. And those guys, so Kershaw now doesn't have completely overpowering fastball. And he's still getting guys out, and it doesn't seem super fluky. There's nothing fluky about like superb control and being able to avoid homers. Those are two. It's really hard to do as you get older. That like a guy like Dan Harron, wonderful pitcher in his prime, and seems to be a really good person from what I've seen. But as he got older, the control was wonderful, but I called him he was a kebab, which was like, really good K, really good walk, but he'd get skewered with home runs. So Kershaw still seems to do it. I at a certain point in the draft, I get it, and it's probably in certain builds where you've got more durable guys ahead of him, or it's a league with a big bench that you could hold on to him when he inevitably goes on a 15-day rest or something. Thor, I think, is an afterthought. He really didn't look good last year.
No, the strikeouts were gone. That's what he was good for.
Yeah, I mean that I think he's kind of the opposite. Like I just don't. He doesn't have the feel. He was kind of this brute force pitcher. Good control. He was never it wasn't wild, but he really didn't have great swing and miss stuff. And JD Martinez at this point, I mean, like I think he's okay. I mean, I don't think he's like completely cooked. But it's again that thing where I don't think he's the plus average guy he was, and that average and the homers are just so tied. You don't get both. So he's as a DH only guy, he's fine at where you probably have to, if you get him in like 14th, 15th round of like it's okay.
Yeah, I
a little boring for the Dodgers, who've had
it really
like
is.
a Freeman last year, and they'd added Turner 2 years ago and Betts and all this stuff, and like this year you're just like, yeah, the Bills come and due.
Yeah, they had to get rid. They had to let Turner walk. Couldn't pay it, or they just didn't. And then, they just didn't make the big splash. But I mean, they've got so many good players their farm system is deep too. So
they've got some really interesting pitchers.
They do
coming up, and so that's going to be the interesting thing with, that's like
they always
how
do.
Especially now. So I'm interested to see what happens with them, and it's kind of one where I don't know who it'll be. The timing of these stuff and how many, but I do feel like there's going to be like some relevant in-season pitchers.
Well, as we like to say on this show, the Dodgers will definitely dodger their pitchers. So, like, the
10-day DL thing.
Kershaw may not be hurt, but, oh, man, I woke up with a sore shoulder today. Go on the DL. Like, that's going to happen. And so they'll bring up these prospects and let them pitch, right?
There's some of that. And that stuff's tough on shallow bench leagues. And that's
ridiculous.
Yeah. So, if I'm playing in a daily league, it's like, Kershaw is not a guy that I don't. You're renting him. You'd rent. You're like, I'm okay to rent, but like I'm not. Especially because sometimes you don't have IL, or it is like, no, you just find out in the middle of the week. Yeah, we're gonna skip the start.
Yeah,
like those are the ones.
It's rough. It's really rough. So, they do it with everybody. It feels like so. All right, well, let's close out this show here. So we're gonna rip through these last 4 teams. I'm just gonna run through all the names.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the guys that we highlighted. So the Padres, their big signing was Xander Bogaerts. The Giants, they signed Mitch Haniger, Michael Conforto, Ross Stripling, Jock Peterson. The one I highlighted was Taylor Rogers. That's sort of interesting. I mean, like, there was a prime closer there for a while
half
there.
A year.
The Rangers, obviously the DeGrom, that's the one I want to hear about. Evaldi, and then Andrew Heaney. And then the Twins, were kind of nothing there for a little while, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, after we made these notes, all of a sudden they got finally Carlos Correa after he's officially signed for a combined $900 million this off seasons between all the teams he signed for, and then traded just recently for Pablo Lopez, giving up Luis Arraez and a couple of prospects. So the names highlighted here are Bogarts, Rogers, DeGrom, and then I kind of have both those Twins moves. So I don't know, maybe give a couple minutes on just each one so we can, because we're running a little long. So just to close it out here.
I mean, I think Bogarts, solid player. I mean, I think he's going to hit middle of that lineup. Great. Some great bats in that lineup. So, like, I think Bogarts and going down to Correa are these guys that they're not going to steal, which is something you just have to live with at where you're drafting them. But really solid 4-category production with, I think, really good floors if healthy. The Giants stuff really does little for me. The park is tough, so I don't see any of the guys mentioned. Maybe, I mean, their pitchers are always a little interesting for that. So Stripling maybe kind of gets lumped in with every other Giant pitcher. That's after Logan Webb, where you're like, suddenly they look kind of good after like the 15th round. You start getting like, everyone looks bad, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, because they also added Sean Manaea. Like, oh, I drafted Sean Manaea after the 20th round the other day. And you're like, Alex Wood is always kind of pretty safe when he puts it at home.
I did the same thing with all of them.
And Stripling and Cobb. Like, so that's basically the Giants right now. Like, you almost want no hitters from that team.
Yeah.
And most pitchers are useful. And on Taylor Rogers, I think Doval's the closer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like, even though he had that good year for most of the year last year, like, it didn't feel like it's his role.
No, and he's older too, and he's got his brother. He's reunited with his brother, Tyler, So I don't think I'm not too worried. I'm drafting Duvall as the main closer, and that's not going to be a share at this point. With the Rangers, I mean, DeGrom, it's just a matter of what
I want to know about.
I mean, but no one knows. So it's really a total risk reward thing. So I don't, like, one person in your league is gonna have the testicular temerity to take him.
I mean, he came back last year and still threw over a 14K per nine. That's insane.
It's insane. And I mean, like, I don't see the environment change is not going to be an issue. So it's it's one where I'm probably going to have to figure out how do I take him and still feel and like build around that risk.
The projections love him, and
how could you not? I mean, look at his regular stats; they're insane.
Yeah, I mean, your projections like him. So do the ones that I'm throwing out there. My tools like him. It's just the ADP is like down here compared to the projections, and it's like, oh man, what do you do?
Right. So this is like a good way to look at it. So on my projections on the player radar on Razzball, I haven't really done much in terms of touting my shit. So that's like free, but we have a dollar metric and a dollar per game metric.
Mm-hmm.
And the dollar per game metric's really good for basically saying, like, if this guy played full playing time, what would he be? So like something like Garrett Cole is like a $30 player, and if you told me you get every stat, he's like 36. So he gets a lot close. So if you said Garrett Cole will start 31 games, I'd be like, you can make an argument he's a top 4 or 5 pick because, but based on that one thing, you cannot promise me. But if you could, DeGrom's the number. Like, if you told me you're in 30 starts from DeGrom, I'm telling you, he's the number 1 pick.
Number 1 pick, yeah.
And he's at $44 on my thing, and I'm probably hedged his innings per start. Like, no one is even close. He is so ahead of everyone else. So
good.
I only have him at 140 innings. I have like Rodon at 166, Burns at 190, So I've docked him 50 innings.
Yeah, I've got him around 145.
And I still have him at number 21. And he's
overall
going
or pitcher?
Overall.
Yeah.
Third pitcher off the thing. So you look at it like that and you go like, okay, I just need 140 to break even. And there's easily 40 innings of potential profit on the upside where there's no upside with Corbin Burns. You're paying for 190 innings. Maybe there's a 10, but there's really no upside there. So it's pretty obvious.
But you play,
the Grum thing, and we don't
pay
know
for the safety sometimes. That's okay.
It's and there's the reality is like it's probably completely delusional to think you could. Oh well, I'm gonna I could see if I paired DeGrom with Nola, and you could, but it's all nonsense.
Yeah,
Nola could get hurt because it's starting pitching and stuff like that.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, pitcher's a total crapshoot when it comes more of a crapshoot than hitters when it comes to injuries. So yeah, I mean, DeGrom's either gonna win people leagues or lose people leagues. I guarantee it again this year. Like same thing same mistake we made with Chris Sale last year, man. Yeah. People bought in and then just crashed and burned.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like with DeGrom, it's a weird thing where you almost still have to basically draft him and still draft a full rotation, and then just know you overspent on pitching. But if it hits, but basically your floor is super high, and if it hits, you're this monster 60 points, and you basically win everything except saves. Which sounds like, well, yeah, but how do you field a hitting team? It's like, well, how many times have you seen people, like if I told you draft these 4 guys and you'll have the best offense, you'd be like, oh, sign me up. Well, yeah, just do it with pitchers. and it's a lot more feasible if I told you drafted, I don't know, Burns, DeGrom, Nola, and I don't know. Going down the list, Gaussman, I don't know, just made up, and you draft those 4 and you're guaranteed 15 points in those things. You'd be like, it's a way of thinking, but it's the thing where like you can't choose DeGrom and then go light on pitching otherwise, or
you're gonna have to hedge your bets with DeGrom.
And it's the only way to basically protect to make your team less fragile. It's you're a team that you've realized you're investing, you're over investing versus the market a bit in starting pitching.
Yeah. All right, so let's finish off here with the Twins. I'm interested. So I'm just gonna ask you this question: Can Correa stay healthy enough to be fantasy viable this year and worth drafting?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think he's been a good value the last couple of years to me. But the problem is by the time he goes in the draft, you typically have a shortstop because shortstop's so deep. So I do think there's an interesting play to say, fill up your other positions, and then by the time Correa shows up in the 8th or 9th round or something like that, I mean. Last 2 years, he's averaged 600 plate appearance, over 600 plate appearances. He hits 280-ish, which is really good this year.
Yeah.
The power's there. No
steals, but it is.
No, well, that's right. So it's a construct thing. The key, it's every year. It felt like every draft last year, particularly, I was like, I already had my shortstops because there was other guys I liked, and he'd come off the board so late, and I'd be really frustrated. I'm like, I couldn't take him. He just didn't fit in my team. I needed deals from shortstops, or I had it filled. And this was the first year I actually did it, and I was kind of looking at where I was just like, man, this works really well. It was a team where I had invested heavy in pitching, and guys like Correa basically help build up your other things, and you just got to figure out things with things like a stolen bases. That's one where like you choose one or two guys, and you're kind of banking on like a Chisholm or an Estuary Ruiz. It was a very interesting one. If you look at
If he
that guy's
starts the
stats,
season, man, that guy's gonna be awesome. But good luck.
right? And right, but that's one of the things where it's the thinking you have to do if you go heavy pitching. If you go heavy hitting, all of a sudden you're like trying to try to find these starting pitchers that are diamonds in the rough that suddenly figure things out. And that is, if you could do it, hit me up, because it's only gotten tougher because so many people are looking, and it feels like that the guys that used to be, I mean, old school would be calling them like the Ron Chandler Limas, where there was like, oh, this guy, and you go forward into just like the guys the hype guys, or the guys that you just find you like, this guy looks really good. I don't understand why he's going in the 15th round. Like, they don't exist anymore in most leagues. Like, basically by the time you get out of the 10th round and you're just like, oh God, I just want a pitcher that doesn't make me want to puke.
Yeah.
Like a pitcher, like you're already going for thinking damage control. Like, upside is hard to even like fathom in like pick 150 to 300 with starting pitching. Like guys like Brady Singer, where you're like, it's a big park, and
maybe he's safe.
Right, like
he's not gonna kill me.
Maybe Reed Detmers figures it out. Maybe there was something last year, but like it's everything is in like a really it's in that voice that does not sound very going back to
confident.
Doesn't sound like that beer. Doesn't sound like
no, it doesn't
big
sound
truck
like big
beer.
Truck.
No, it sounds like some like sour beer. Like, I don't know, maybe Brady Singer will be okay. Maybe he has another level. So that's the
sour power.
Oh, there you go.
Like that one either.
Mango sour power. Wow, it's
Singer
finally harnessed the sourness of mango. So that's it. So I said, like I like, but it's not so much. I think Correa is a fine player. I think he was. I thought the free agent bidding on him and going that far on him was maybe a little out of whack, because he seems just like a very good but not a great player.
Yeah, I agree.
But he is one of those guys seems to be an interesting fantasy value, maybe just because shortstops that can't run are besmirched. And that hits Bogarts too, to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
And that'll be. But yeah, it does seem like.
Sounds like we might be able to find some speed elsewhere this year, though. So, all right, man. So I think that's gonna be it for us. So, thank you for coming on, Rudy. We appreciate having you here, and I'm sure I'll hopefully I can convince you to come on for our NFL draft show again. You can trash talk your Giants as you.
Well, we don't have a top pick this year.
Oh, true. That is.
I know.
True. So
I mean, I'm in the bag for Bijan Robinson because I'm a Texas fan, and it also obviously goes with don't re-sign Barkley. Just but it's a completely bonkers one that won't. That's not realistic at all. But
you're fresh off a Coach of the Year for Brian Daboll, so that's nice.
Yeah, I mean it's I can't no complaints with Giants this year. At least there's some sign of hope. And hopefully they get off the bandwagon of they can do better with trade. But that's for a couple months from now.
Absolutely. So I will be hitting you up for that. But before we let you go, let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter and what you got going on this season for baseball.
Yeah, at Rudy Gamble. My stuff is at Rasball. I really don't write too much anymore. But the player rater for the preseason projections, the in-season right now, if you sign up for the in-season tool package, you get my draft room. Highly recommended. it basically just makes drafting a lot easier. There's some stuff in it that you're not going to find in most other areas. But it's kind of added value for the in-season tools. So you play daily, you play weekly. It's just having like a really a very informed second opinion, helping to guide your picks for fab or daily pickups.
Cool.
And we have DFS projections and all that stuff too. Not to so that's all there. But yeah, if you have any questions on it, you just hit me up on Twitter for as long as it's a solvent platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Rudy's a great guy. He's smart. So follow his stuff. Highly recommend it. But thank you, Rudy. We'll have to do this again soon. See you, man.
Right on.
Thanks.
All right, AJ. So that is it for the show. We're going to be starting our position previews next week. Starting out with our, if I can find the right tab here, probably catcher first base, right, with Mr. Eric Cross himself. So looking forward to doing that. So that is it for the show. Make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Jump into fantasy6pack.net/plans and become a member today and get up on all that value as well. But that's it for me. AJ, any parting words?
Go Birds.
Ugh. Oh, okay. Good night.
You asked.
I'm sorry. Should never have done that.